Hi guys, we got some new engines in to review this week. We got some Argus engines. I got 3 I ordered from Argus. If you know anything about me, I used to sell Argus, run Argus, race them and stuff, and so we're going to take a look at these engines, and then we're going to do a pre-order on these. Looking at March 1st for ordering them. So I have everything. I have a link in the description to the how to buy them, and it'll be just on my website under new engines, and I have PayPal buttons set up there. You just pay for it, I'll order it, comes in, I'll ship it to you. Now these engines that I ordered, I ordered them, took about a week for them to process the order, send them out, and then 2 weeks to get them. So it's not a lot of lead time. Depending on how many engines, if it's quite a few engines, they might have to a little more of a delay, but it was pretty good. Even in the past, there's not a huge delay by the time I order them to the time they ship them. So, pretty good deal. I'm going to give you a little bit of discount because it's a pre-order thing. You're going to pay for it in advance, but be pretty cool. I'm trying to keep the shipping. It cost me $200-300 in shipping to ship a bunch of engines, so it's a little bit of cost there plus my markup and stuff. So we should be good. The engines themselves, we'll take a look under the light and stuff. They're really nice looking engines. I think just I like the black, nice logos, packaging's nice. They got a lot of neat features. We'll look at what the difference is between this K3 and the K3 Evo 2, which is the new one. This one's got a little more value to it because it's the older model. This one's actually the same as a Dragon 3. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, we're going to look at this Argus K3 engine. This is their box. You can see it's K3. Pretty nice packaging. They've had this box for years. I always kind of like the logo and the colors and stuff. So in the box of this K3, first thing you see is this. Basically, it's pre-broken in. So the K3 Evo 2, there's a GT engine. They all come broken in at the factory. You need to run 2 to 4 fuel tanks at 30 to 80% throttle. So yeah, that's a really nice thing. These come pre-broken in. You don't have to mess around. It'd be I don't know what their process is there at the factory, if they're oil bath or running them or lapping them or what they're doing. I don't know. Decal set. Exploded view, parts list. Everything you need there. Nice protective coating here. We got 2 extra restrictors here, an A7, so a 6mm and a 7mm. We'll see what's in the engine. Comes with a glow plug. The T8, it says it's a cold plug. Give it a try, but I think for braking you definitely want something hotter. We'll find out what the head shimming is on it and what I would recommend for a plug later. And here's the engine. As you can see, it's a really nice looking engine. I like the looks of it. It's got a little, the accents here, the holes drilled in the head, make it light. The block, everything, I think looks really good. It's cut down for some of the engine or some of the cars that have the drive shaft that comes really close to the engine. That's your serial number. The carb on these, I've never ran this carb. Back when I used to sell Argus, they did not have a 3-needle carb, so they've been updated since then. The carb's always tuned really good, the Argus and Alpha. Now, like I said, this is basically the same engine as a Dragon 3. So yeah, it's a sexy looking engine. I really like it. Looks really good. I'd run this just based on looks. We'll see what it has for a carb restrictor in here. So a 6.5 in the engine, so it has a 6.5, 7, 6.5, 6, or 6, 6.5, 7. Yep. I don't, typically that's what I don't like to run smaller than 6, or 6.5 even, but I almost always like a 7 on my stuff, so that's pretty nice to have those. They're, you know, anodized aluminum. You can tell by the color which one you have, so it's a good deal. So let's look at the internals on this thing. Okay, we got everything stripped down here. I do need to, I was going to do a little demonstration on the, I don't know if you watched the video on my tools I made. This is basically what I use in the shop to take sleeves out. And instead of putting a zip tie in there, we're taking the, basically there's two sides. One's relieved a little more for a narrower port. Hook the exhaust port. And turn the engine over and the sleeve comes up. The new engines are obviously, there's a nice fit on here, but once engines run they get kind of gummed up in there and stuff, so I don't know. We'll see if this, yeah, see, I can't get this. Sometimes on new engines it's almost impossible to get the rod off of the crank. It's just too tight in there, so I guess we'll go through how I do that on a new engine. Quite a few years ago when I was selling Go engines, I believe, I couldn't get the rod off the crank. It just, everything, you know, your crank's new and the rod bushing's new, and it just, the clearance there, plus, you know, it needs to slide out and your piston is kind of hitting the side there. So I made this tool, had it around since. Basically the first thing you want to do is I just put the sleeve over the crank here to keep the crank from sliding out, because you start pulling on that, then the crank kind of slides with it sometimes when it's tight. So we just want to make sure this crank, you could put a clutch on here too. If you put a clutch on that, that would hold it back. And then I have this tool I made a few years ago. Basically just hooks. I'm not going to be putting a wrench on there. That's just a bolt I used. I would never put a wrench on there if it was that tight. So basically just hook it. That just hooks on the rod. And then just pull this a little bit. Just finger it, and then that's it. So it's not super tight, but it just enough you can't get it. I've heard of guys using a zip tie around the rod. I didn't have any luck with that, but this system always worked for me. And basically, if you're at yourself, whatever, and you don't have to take it apart, and you're just curious, probably best to just leave it alone rather than wreck something. But being at modify engines, I do need to get them apart when they're new. So we have this thing apart now. We have everything. Get this tool out of here. So we got this thing apart, and look at the block here. One thing I do kind of like is this red anodized pinch bolt. I often kind of wondered why they do those in steel when they could make aluminum would work just as well. It'd be a little bit lighter. So that's a good feature. It looks good too. The block is cut down for the head clearance a little bit there. Machining is really good. Alpha and Argus, you look at the machining on some of this stuff. Look at the head. Yeah, the machining is just really good, and the materials too. You don't get this kind of finish on crappy materials too. It's got to be a good material too. So that's always impressed me with Argus and Alpha for being a Taiwan company and stuff. They really do I think materials and machining and stuff has been really good. Like this one is a steel rear bearing. There's a few differences between the K3 Evo 2 and the K3, and the ceramic bearing on the K3 Evo 2. One difference. This is a 3-port. Some pretty nice cuts on the sleeve. Nice wide exhaust port at the top. Piston, like I said, these come pre-broken in, so you'll see a little bit on the top there, a little bit shiny. These, you can kind of see, I don't know if we can see it really good, but there's kind of some little, it's got a little texture to the aluminum has a little bit of texture, almost like it's porous or something. And they've been this way ever since they've made engines. Alpha and Argus, they use a hyper-eutectic type material. You don't see it in the other parts of the engine, but it's got silica in it, like a silica sand. And then I've used them on full size when I built full size engines, V8s, 350s. That the expansion rate of a hyper-eutectic piston with silica in it is less. It doesn't expand as much. It's a little harder. I've actually machined valve pockets and pistons, and it just chewed up my carbide bit. So it's harder. It's actually almost like sanded and stuff. So should hold a pinch longer. That's one thing about these. You can run these over 300 degrees. They don't. You don't lose your pinch. Crank on this, silicone filled, so it's drilled and filled. And these cranks used to be black oxide, like you see in a lot of cranks. This is plated, so this crank is plated for better wear. It looks kind of like, I think it's just like a chrome, but it's still a lot harder than the actual steel. So it's not DLC coating, but it is, 80% what DLC is, or I would just guess that it's way better than having just raw steel. So should be a little bit corrosion resistant too. Nice turbo scoop there. We got cuts. So yeah, everything on this is pretty good quality. Their materials on the crank were pretty good anyways, but with that plating, it should just last just quite a bit longer. The head, I like the logo in the head black, so it matches everything. Drilled out, pretty light head. Machined accents here. Really nice. Backplate on this one's pretty basic. That might be like a hard coat. I'm not sure. But the carb, like I said, these carbs, I haven't personally ran this, but I always like the Alpha and Argus carbs. This one's got the third needle. And what that does is, if you see that brass that extends into there, where the spray bar, basically where the fuel comes out. And I don't recommend, unless you're really an experienced tuner, messing with that mid needle. OS and some of the other companies that use them, they don't often touch that. But if you want to mess around and you're a good tuner and stuff, I mean, you certainly can. But that would just change the relationship of where that brass piece is in there. So typically, sometimes if you screw that one in, then you'd need to screw out the low speed needle. But maybe we can take the restrictor out here and get a better look. Let's tighten there. So it looks like a hard coated carb slide, long low speed needle. It looks like stainless. Looks like stainless steel needles. So you can see that brass spray bar in there. Yeah, they're good tuning carbs. Like I said, it comes broken in. It's a good quality engine. I like everything I'm seeing here. We'll look at the K3 Evo 2 and see the differences, but the main difference being, well, one of the differences, Evo 2 has the brass weight in the silicone fill, has a drilled backplate and stuff. So we'll look at that in a different video. We'll look at the Evo 2, but basically for the money, this one's actually the better value because it's the older, it's the old generation, and they're offering it, you know, a little bit cheaper because of that. Like I said, this is basically the same engine as the Alpha Dragon 3. So we'll go through some timing numbers, I guess, here. So we got the, let's see if we can see those. Argus K3, blowdown is 40, induction open 155, induction close 68 for a total of 222. And if you followed some of my other videos, you know those numbers are pretty good. 16.28 bore, so this is the standard long stroke, kind of like the original P5 was. 16.28 is the kind of just the standard long stroke. 16.7 stroke. So these numbers are actually, if I was to modify this engine, I would not increase these numbers. So this basically, OS speeds and some of the ones that have basically the most timing, this is really similar. The blowdown of 40 is pretty good too. That's going to be a pretty good top end engine. We'll look at the timing numbers on the K3 Evo 2, and I believe this one's it should be decent in a truggy, but I think the Evo 2 might be a little bit better in a truggy. But we'll go through that one too. But those numbers are real similar on both, but this should be a good overall, definitely a great buggy engine. Truggy, it should have enough oomph off the corners, but not personally ran it. I guess I couldn't say, but definitely a really good numbers. This engine really doesn't really need any modifying. I don't really see anything in there that needs change. You know, there's a nice bevel on the bottom side of the ports here. I've ran a similar engine, basically a different carb, but I've ran the 3-port Argus that they had a few years ago. Didn't have the plated crank and stuff, but it was great torquey engine, just ran great. So I'll include a video. If I find the video, I'll include that. So like I said, if you really like this engine or the Evo 2 and stuff, and you want to, you know, I'll leave a link in the description to where you can pre-order it for March 1st. I'll be pre-ordering it, and then so everything would have to be paid for before March 1st, and we'll get that ordered. So yeah, good race engine for the summer. Well, that's about it on the oh, one thing I did forget too is I did measure the piston to head clearance. It's around 22 to 24 thousandths, which I consider that probably the minimum you would, or the tightest you would want. I would say that's probably good for 20 to 25% fuel. If I was personally going to run 30, I would add 4 thousandths head shim. And a lot of these, you know, the engines used to come with the break-in shim and stuff. They used to come with extra head shim. I haven't seen one, but these you could use an Overos. You could any head shim with a 16.28 bore will work. And I'll maybe get some. I usually got some around, but maybe when I place an order, I'll maybe send a head shim with these too, if I remember. It's good, but I would personally, the engines, the first Alphas and stuff come closer to 30 thousandths piston head clearance, and I thought they were easier to tune and less detonation and stuff. It really depends on how you run it too. You know, when it really lugs coming off a corner, if you're running in a truggy, it's going to detonate a little bit easier than a buggy. If you're on a slippery track, you probably never get that load coming off the corner. Where a high bite, you're just loading it off the corner and stuff. But it kind of depends on the fuel you're running. But that would be my recommendation. Would be If you're gonna run it harder, especially running a truggy and stuff, add 4,000 head shims. So I think that's about it on this. MSRP is $250 on the K3. I'm gonna have them on the pre-order for $225 for a pre-broken in engine. So you figure if you send it off for IBIS or something somewhere, that's $175 you get in the engine for. So that's pretty good value in today's times. So thanks for watching.